It was a record-breaking night for Quinn Hughes as he broke Doug Lidster's franchise record for points by a defenseman in a season. Yet, the Canucks were mathematically eliminated from the postseason for the sixth time in 7 years. It's Locked On Canucks. We're going to have some fun. Let's get to it.
Your Locked On Canucks, your daily podcast on the Vancouver Canucks. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to Locked On Canucks. I'm your host, Justin Pooney. Please like and subscribe to our YouTube channel. But also, I want to say thank you to everybody for making Locked On Canucks your first listen of the day. I know it's kind of late out west. I've been kind of busy. As you can see, I'm dressed up in a turtleneck. I had some, important business to attend to today. But I still made sure I got that episode out for you guys. So if it's not your first listen, thank you for making it your second listen of the day. Of course, we are free and available wherever you get your podcasting services. Guys, last night, or actually yesterday, hopefully you guys did enjoy the episode I did with Erica from Locked On Kraken. I was right. The Canucks did win by 2 or more goals. The puck line did hit. But in all seriousness, I want to say thank you to Erica specifically for inviting me to come on, have a collaborative episode. Definitely be something we do in the future. It was a great show. I had a blast. And to beat the Kraken at home in a game which saw Spencer Martin play, decently well. Quinn Hughes break a franchise record, and also the night where the Canucks were finally mathematically eliminated from the playoffs. All around, we knew it was coming. It was expected. The grave was kind of already dug. They just had to put the last bit of dirt over the coffin of the Canucks season. And now we play the string up for the next 2 games, and we go from there. And the offseason hits, and all the fun begins of offseason predictions, draft lottery, free agency, trade, who stays, who goes. And we're going to kind of touch into that a bit today. I want to talk about kind of the first block, just JT Miller. JT Miller potentially is going to get 100 points this season. And I honestly think that it is something that needs to be talked about because his contract is coming up and it's going to be a hot pressing, I assume a hot pressing issue. Now, currently JT Miller sits at 78 games played, 31 goals, 66 assists for 97 points. And let's just face it, he's been the engine of the Canucks this year. Quick stat for you about JT Miller. I just was reading this today. In his 3 years with the Canucks, in about 200 games, he's scored 215 points. 200 points in 215 games, which is hovering on a point per game. And 215 points in 200 games, which is by far the most. Quinn Hughes is second. He played a lot less games. So what I'm trying to say is JT Miller, since he's come over to the Canucks from the Tampa Bay Lightning, has been an absolute gem. And as I mentioned before in the show, it is going to be interesting to see what transpires this offseason with him and his contract. He's still 1 more year on his deal at $5.25 million. Of course, he's going to get a pay raise because he's simply been the Canucks' best player over the last few years. I think it's pretty safe to say that. What it comes down to with JT Miller is this, in my personal opinion. Is he a pusher or a pull? Sorry, does he need to be pushed or is he a puller? And by that I mean, does he have the wherewithal to drag this team and be a leader and pull this team when going this top, or is he one of those guys that needs to be pushed and guided in order to be successful? And I think we all know JT Miller is the type of guy that's a stand-up guy. He's a gritty guy, a 200-foot player who can obviously produce at a high level, but he's a puller. He can get on front. It's funny. You look at the NBA, they're all talking about driving the bus and that being a measure of how successful you are as a player. JT Miller is a bus driver of a team. He's a guy who is going to lead a team to maybe not a Stanley Cup, but he's a guy on a team who can be considered a leader, an elite player. And he has to stick around. Now, I know a lot of people are wondering, well, what if he's pricing himself out of Vancouver and stuff like that? It doesn't matter. I always have this philosophy, this way of thinking that if you have star players, you got to pay them and keep them. Yes, it's a salary cap league, but also you look at the NFL. The NFL is a salary cap league where stars are at a premium. You look where, wide receivers now, where weapons are so important in football that they're getting $30 million a year for wide receivers because it's a premium position. JT Miller is a frontline player. He can play center, he can play wing, he can, split penalty kill, power play, he can do it all. He is a guy, a valuable asset that needs to be in this organization. And I don't for certain players, I believe, yes, there's a cap you have to spend. But I think with a guy like JT Miller, and considering the rumors are, I don't think it's going to be something crazy over, 11 million, 12 million. He might ask that and not getting rid of it, but that's all part of negotiation. I think JT Miller, is going to price himself into that 8 million, 8.5 million a year. And I would gladly pay that for him because he's a guy that is a culture setter. He's a puller. He's a leader and he seems to fit in this organization. And I think you do whatever it takes to sign him, as well as Bo Horvat. These type of guys, these quality locker room guys, these guys that are producing on and off the ice, they need to stick around because what's the biggest thing I've been harping on about this team? Culture, sustainability, working together, foundation building, strength. Those two guys are two beams, pillars of a foundation that needs to be rebuilt. Um, of course, it also fluctuates to when what management wants, what the new coaching staff wants. But by all indications, Brujo's going to come back, and I expect JT Miller to sign a lucrative deal this offseason because A, he's deserved it, and B, because the Canucks need him. My first show, I said, JT Miller's been playing so well this season, you cannot trade him. And I think every Canucks fan now would well, you have your cynical Canucks fans who would obviously say, "Oh, well, he's overpriced himself. I don't want to waste any money on him, whatever." For me, you're not who in the draft. If you draft some trade JT Miller for a bunch of draft picks or prospects, are you surefire going to get a guy who's going to ever amount to JT Miller's status over the last 3 years? I don't. It's an unknown. Yes, you might, or no, it could be a bust, right? I'd rather take the known commodity. That's the safer route, in my opinion. You look at stocks or business or you know anything. I think you take the known commodity of JT Miller and you keep him. Now, again, if they decide to switch the organizational structure and decide that we don't want Miller anymore, then there's nothing I can really do about that. But look, 100-point score. He says the biggest thing for him is winning, and I totally agree with him. There's always guys out there in sports that I feel the money, the paycheck is more important than winning. And hey, I totally respect that decision. If that is your prerogative, when you play professional sports and you want to put your money, your business, and your finances and your generational wealth ahead of winning, by all means, I cannot hate on that because as a professional athlete, you have such a finite period of time to capitalize on that money. I will never be mad at somebody to ever chase the money because I'm the same way. If I have an opportunity that will help and secure my finances, to help my family, my loved ones out more, to put me in a better position in the world, I will obviously consider that and probably will take that because that's how I'm wired. Now, somebody else might be different, right? When it comes to sports, I can never hate on somebody who um, takes the money over winning. Now, it hurts if it's my own team and they won't take a pay cut or whatever. But JT Miller to me seems like a guy who winning consumes him first over money. And I think that could work in the Canucks' favor where they can say, hey, look, we are trying to build a winner here, and we want you to be a key cog. Here's the offer. But you have to back that up. You have to back that promise up that you're actually going to build a contender. And I think the Canucks management right now wants to build a contender. So um, to summarize what I talked about JT Miller right here is look, they're not making the play. They didn't make the playoffs this year, but there are signs of growth. There are signs of things getting better. And I definitely think that keeping JT Miller around would just help this culture, this new era build, because he's been an amazing player for the last 3 years. He's done so much for this organization that if you get rid of him, it kind of sets us back for unknown commodities, unknown things. Unless you're getting a surefire all-star back for JT Miller, which I don't think you will. You probably be getting picks, prospects, and stuff like that. Unless, like I said, it could be a straight hockey trade, or he just simply says, I don't want to be here anymore, then good riddance. But from all indication is I think the Canucks will offer him a new deal, and they will try to hash that out, because quite simply he is a puller. He will pull this franchise. He doesn't need to be pushed. He's not a passenger. He will be up front, and as Charles Barkley says, he will drive the bus. Coming up after the break, I want to talk about Mr. Quinn Hughes and his record-breaking season, and how, again, just how quiet this year has been for him, but how great he has been. But first, I want to talk to you guys about HelloFresh. With HelloFresh, you get farm fresh, pre-portioned ingredients and seasonal recipes delivered right to your doorstep. Skip trips to the grocery store and count on Hello Foods for all your delivery needs. I am extremely busy in my life. I barely have time to grocery shop and stuff like that. But I love HelloFresh because I get farm fresh seasonal produce, easy to make recipes, and they're delivered to my door every week. It is so easy. HelloFresh chefs really know how to diversify the menu, which for me is huge. I love eating different things. Seasonal recipes like salmon limon, pasta primavera. You could pick favorites from 50 different weekly options and skip weeks when you need to, say for going out of town, vacation, whatnot. It's awesome. You customize your own dishes. I love it. Like I said, this past week I was super busy with podcasts, schoolwork, just life in general, and I didn't have time to go to the grocery store. So I hop on HelloFresh, and what do you know? Monday morning, a lovely package of food shows up, and I can make my meals for the rest of the week. So what I want you guys to do is go to hellofresh.com/locked on 16 and use code locked on 16 for up to 16 free meals and 3 free gifts. That is locked on 16 at hellofresh.com/locked on 16 for 16 free meals. Also, HelloFresh is also America's #1 meal kit. Okay, Quinn Hughes last night with a goal. Sorry, with a goal and an assist last night, broke Doug Lidster's record for points by a Canucks defenseman with 60 at 63. Quinn Hughes, in my personal opinion, has had a he's had a 66-point season, almost 70 points, next to Roman Josi, who's been absolutely on fire, 91 points this year. Quinn Hughes had a very, very good year in 74 games played, 25 minutes a game. You know, he the thing about Quinn Hughes that I love the most is simply just his skating ability. His just ability to control the game at ease. And you see that I feel like sometimes we look at Quinn Hughes and um, we don't appreciate enough because it looks like the game comes so easy to him. And that really is a skill itself. When the game comes so easy to a player, it's hard to understand just how great they are. This record stood for 35 years. Maybe that's just and I don't know if it's more praise on Hughes or more ineptitude. The Canucks have never been able to develop an elite defenseman like that. Now we're talking about 35 years ago, back in the 80s, where games were 10-8 or 9-7. We're in a much different league now. But I think this benchmark was just something that will I think it's one of many records he will break. I think he's already has the highest scoring playoffs for a Canucks defenseman. I think he had that back in 2020 over guys like Jurke Lumi from '94, Christian Ehrhoff from 2011, Kevin Bieksa from 2011. It's definitely I think when you look back at this Hughes remember before the deal he signed at the beginning of the year, the 6-year deal, people were like, is it too much? We don't know. I think he kind of justified that this year. The fact that, Quinn Hughes is a franchise defense. He might not be Cale Makar. Then again, Kale McCarr also plays on a much better team, but I think Quinn Hughes kind of proved and justified that this, sorry, excuse me while I catch my breath. Quinn Hughes' salary, his 6 year, $47 million deal, which was 7.8 million, is justified because he is an elite defenseman. And quite frankly, I think as you see him get better and defenseman contracts raise, you'll see, hey, that's actually a good deal. Which is one of the benefits of signing a longer term deal with a player coming into his RFA year, where you get good value. You look at speaking of Colorado Avalanche, look what happened with Nathan McKinnon. He had a kind of a bad year going to his contract year, signed a cheap deal, and he took off. He became one of the top 3 players in the world. And the Colorado Avalanche were paying him like $6 million a year. And it helped them out so much to build this roster now where they are. When you look at it, the Avalanche are a cup contender. They are, quite frankly, to me, I think they're the favorites to win the Stanley Cup because they have a guy like Nathan McKinnon on top of Mikko Rantanen and all these guys. So I just wanted to say, like, Quinn Hughes, congratulations. You've done an excellent job this season. And considering the fact you've had to play with, not to slight on Luke Shen, because Luke Shen's played admirably this year. And I think he's definitely showed that. I'm not too sure if it's me because the Canucks back end, he's got so many minutes, but he's definitely proved that he's a valuable commodity to a NHL defensive core. I don't know if it's a championship defense core, but he's definitely a serviceable everyday defenseman. Um, and playing with Quinn Hughes, who's that calming force. So we'll see if Luke Shen's back next year. But I just want to say that Quinn Hughes definitely deserves praise for breaking a 35-year-old record set by Doug Lidster. The Canucks point per game points in a season by defense, but you're seeing his game develop every year. But now the defensive end has to work a little bit more, but he's improving on that, right? And I think with Hughes, the biggest thing is just the continual improvement. I talked about it with Podkolzin. I talked about it with all these guys. I'd rather see improvement, progression every year. If you take a step back one year, well, I want to see you take that step forward again or 2 steps forward. And I think Quinn Hughes has had a great year this year and kind of reasserted. If, like I said, if there was an Olympics this year, Quinn Hughes would have been on Team USA hands down. Everybody likes to talk about Adam Fox out of New York, Cale McCarr, all these guys. But I think Quinn Hughes kind of put his name back into that conversation as elite young defenseman. So again, Quinn Hughes, congratulations, great job this season. Again, breaking Doug Lidster's 35-year record of points by a defenseman in a season. Now, quickly before we go to our final break, I kind of want to just quickly talk about the biggest disappointments because, again, the Canucks did not make the playoffs for the 6th time in 7 years, and it's very upsetting. So, a couple of disappointments this year. One would be Jason Dickinson. He came in to be a third line center, and he was injured, inconsistent play, and I just didn't see the fit this year. I didn't see why he was such a not so coveted, but why he was brought in. He didn't live up to that expectation of being a shutdown third line center. Who knows if he's back around? I don't know. But he just it was kind of flat for me. I didn't really see anything that popped off the page on a defensive. Look at the Canucks back in their heyday when they had, Manny Malhotra as a third line center, who was a guy that could win you a lot of faceoffs, penalty kill, a gritty guy. That was something that was key for the Canucks. Then the next guy is Niels Höglander. He, again, had a nice rookie year, took a step back this year. And I think that's expected with the sophomore slump. Bruce Boudreau had called him out a few times. I think Höglander can bounce back. I think he's going to be a valuable player in this top 6. He's going to have to make that jump to the top 6 because he has a talent for it. So this offseason is going to be critical for him to take that next step, get his body right, get his mind right, develop further, and then reach that level where he's somebody that we can look at and we can, insert in the top 6 for sure. The other guy's Brock Boeser. Look, Boeser kind of the thing with Brock Boeser is this: has all the skill in the world, in my opinion, to be an elite goal scorer. He just has never reached that level other than his rookie year. Injuries. I don't think with Brock Boeser is this. I'm kind of I'm kind of at the point where I'm with Brock Besser. I'm kind of like, you know what? Maybe it's time to cut loose and move on to a better situation. Sorry, not a better situation, a different direction. Vancouver gets another asset for him, and Minnesota, the Minnesota native could go to Minnesota. But I just think it's time that a fresh change is needed because, like I said, his contract's going to be up. Depends on what he's going to ask for. So I just don't. It could be a situation where you do a Patrick Laine style trade for Pierre-Luc Dubois. It's a straight hockey trade. Swap a guy who needs another change for another change, and both talented guys, and we'll see what happens. But I think Brock Besser was the biggest disappointment because he plays on the top line. He's expected to produce, and he didn't produce that level. Yes, he had injuries. Yes, he has other intangibles at work. But Brock Besser is paid to score goals, and when Brock Besser's not scoring goals, he's not doing his job. And I just think that was the biggest thing for Brock Besser. So those are my three biggest disappointments to kind of back end. Quinn Hughes being the biggest, or not one of the biggest, but breaking a record and having a big surprise and positive thing for the season. But coming up after this break, I just want to touch on Brandon Sutter because he was in the news. He was on the broadcast last night talking about dealing with COVID. And I just, want to send my well wishes. But first, I want to talk to you guys about Built Bar. Built Bar, I love it. Powder puffs, Puffs, the first ever marshmallow infused protein bar, 100% real chocolate, low carbs, low calorie. Built Bar is it. Go to builtbar.com. Tell them I sent you from Locked On and get the promo code. Get yourself a discount. Built Bar is the way to rock and roll. They don't worry about they figure out the taste first, then they make it healthy after. I don't know how they do it, but they do it all the time. Definitely hit up Built Bar. They're healthy, it's good to eat. If you got the late night munchies, the late night snacks, go to get a Built Bar. It will make you feel a lot better instead of those candy bars you'll be crushing in your pantry that you know that you shouldn't be eating, but you're eating anyway. So go to Built Bar, get Built Bar. Definitely something that you want to get on. All right, so we only have a few minutes left in the show. Brandon Sutter was on the Sportsnet broadcast in the intermission talking about just dealing with COVID. Now, he's been out since pretty much the Canucks last year got hit with COVID badly. 25 people in the organization were, out with COVID. Of course, the thoughts of why are we even playing the rest of the season? All that stuff last year. And Sutter has been battling with that since then. He played a few games and he's back on the ice skating. And I just want to wish Brandon Sutter the best. I know in this market, people were getting hard on him because he was getting paid a lot of money and he wasn't producing or the Canucks were struggling. But Brandon Sutter's a solid character guy. He's a guy who he's had a long career, Carolina, Pittsburgh, Vancouver. He's been a strong locker room leader, and you want to see guys like that succeed. And I don't know if he's going to be back in Vancouver next year. He's only on a 1-year deal. He's projected to be he's going to be a UFA again. I don't know if he's going to retire, if he's going to play again, but I just want to see Brandon Sutter come back healthy. He's got a young family. He's got I'm sure he's got a young family. I'm sure he wants to live a long life, and he will. I just wish that Brandon Sutter takes his time, put hockey second. Your life, any thing you do, in my personal opinion, if you're in a career and you are dealing with a certain ailment, work should come second. Your personal health, your physical health, your mental health should always come first, because if your physicals aren't working, your mentals aren't working, you aren't going to be completely functional, and that's going to be deterrent to wherever your loved ones, your employment, if your mentals aren't working, your physical health's not going to work, if vice versa, right? So I mean, I want to see Brandon Sutter just get healthy and be able to reintegrate himself with regular life and just be live an active life. Now, if he can come back and play in the NHL, that is great. But it just shows you just how much this pandemic, this virus, has affected our lives. So I definitely hope that Brandon Sutter gets right. I would see him back on the ice, hopefully potentially in a Canucks uniform. I think he would have been a great fourth line center and a great leader for a team, especially with a young youth movement coming in, or just like I mentioned before, culture. So I think Brandon Sutter can be a guy to help set the culture in Vancouver. So that's kind of it for today, guys. A quick episode again. Sorry, I was a little bit late dropping it today. I just kind of busy with the customs of life. But tomorrow, we will have the Canucks versus Kings, which would have been an amazing game if the Canucks were still in the playoff hunt, but they're not. So we'll break it down. Maybe Spencer Martin gets more action. The young guys talk about that. Maybe some draft lottery simulators, because that's what we're looking forward to. So that's coming up tomorrow. On Locked On Canucks. I want to thank you for making Locked On Canucks your first listen or second listen of the day, your next listen of the day. Tune to the guys on Locked On NHL who get you set for everything NHL, get you primed, ready for all things NHL. The Stanley Cup playoffs right around the corner. I'm going with the Hurricanes to win the Cup. That's my prediction. I should have waited to tell you that, but you don't forget. I'm going to go with the Hurricanes to win the Stanley Cup. And so check out the guys on Locked On NHL, and also take care. Everybody, stay safe.